I can still remember the exact moment I realized what had happened. I was sitting in the conference room, surrounded by the entire marketing department, watching my boss, Brian, present my campaign strategy to the executive team. Every slide, every insight, every innovative approach, they were all mine. Ideas I'd spent months developing, researching late into the night, perfecting over countless weekends. Yet there he was, confidently presenting them as his own creation, never once acknowledging my work. And the worst part? The executives were loving it. I watched our CEO, Philip, nod approvingly as Brian explained the market segmentation approach I had developed. I saw the CMO, Andrea's eyes light up at the innovative social media strategy that had come to me during a 2 a.m. brainstorming session. And I felt my stomach drop when they announced Brian's promotion to Senior Marketing Director, a position I had been working toward for 3 years. My name is Haley Lawson, and at 32, I just witnessed my career being hijacked in real time. But while Brian was accepting congratulations and planning his corner office move, I wasn't crying in the bathroom or updating my resume in defeat. No, I was mentally calculating exactly how this betrayal would unfold and how I would turn it around. Because Brian had made one critical mistake. He'd stolen my ideas, but he had absolutely no idea how to execute them. Let me back up a bit. I joined Meridian Technologies 5 years ago as a marketing specialist. It wasn't my dream job initially. The pay was decent, but not spectacular. The office was a bland corporate space in a forgettable office park, and my initial responsibilities were basic: create social media posts, draft email newsletters, update the website, standard marketing grunt work. But I saw potential. Meridian had developed a promising software platform for healthcare providers, something that could genuinely improve patient outcomes and streamline clinical workflows. The problem was nobody knew about it. Their marketing was stale, technical, and completely missed the emotional connection that would resonate with overworked healthcare professionals. Within 6 months, I'd worked my way up to marketing manager, leading a small team and bringing fresh ideas to our campaigns. The numbers spoke for themselves. Lead generation up 45%, website traffic doubled, conversion rates climbing steadily. The executives noticed, and I was invited to more strategic meetings. That's when Brian arrived. New marketing director, brought in from outside with a flashy MBA and experience at a competitor. From day one, something felt off about him. He dressed impeccably in custom suits, name dropped industry leaders constantly, and had a way of taking credit for team successes while distancing himself from failures. Haley is handling that underperforming campaign, he'd say about projects that weren't meeting expectations. My team delivered exceptional results this quarter, he'd announce when our numbers looked good. I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he was just establishing himself, feeling insecure in a new role. Maybe this was just corporate politics I needed to learn to navigate. So I kept my head down and continued delivering results, documenting everything meticulously, a habit from my first job that had served me well. Then came the Horizon Project. Meridian was preparing to launch a major new platform update, something that could potentially double our market share if positioned correctly. The executive team made it clear this launch needed to be spectacular. We need something innovative, our CEO Philip had said during the brief. Healthcare marketing is drowning in the same tired approaches. Show me something that will make our competitors nervous. This was my chance. I asked Brian for the opportunity to lead the campaign development. I appreciate your enthusiasm, Haley, he said with that condescending smile I'd come to recognize. But this is too important. I'll handle the core strategy. You can support with the execution details. I nodded professionally while seething inside. Support with execution details? I had been delivering our best performing campaigns for 2 years, but I had learned that direct confrontation rarely worked with someone like Brian. Of course, I replied. I'd still like to put together some strategic concepts. Would you mind if I developed a few ideas to share with you? Just to contribute to your thinking. He waved his hand dismissively. Sure, sure. Email them over when you have something. That night, I stayed late at the office, pulling together research, competitive analyses, market trends, and customer insights. I ordered dinner at my desk and worked until midnight, then continued at home until 3 a.m. Over the next 2 weeks, I built what I knew was the best marketing strategy of my career, a comprehensive, innovative approach that positioned our software not just as a tool, but as a movement to transform patient care. The strategy included everything: market segmentation analysis, messaging frameworks, channel strategy, content blueprints, ROI projections, and a detailed implementation timeline. I even created mock ups of key campaign elements to bring it to life. When I finally sent it to Brian, it was a 45-page document with supporting research and creative concepts. His response? Thanks. I'll review when I can. A week passed with no feedback. When I asked about it in our one on one meeting, he glanced at his watch and said, It's on my list. We've got the executive presentation next week, so I'm focused on pulling that together. I'd be happy to help with that, I offered. I've got it handled, he replied curtly. But I need you to update the social media calendar for Q4. Make sure it aligns with our current messaging. Back to execution details. I nodded and left his office, increasingly suspicious. I noticed he'd been booking the small conference room for hours at a time, door closed, blinds drawn. When I walked by, I could see him surrounded by printouts and notes, looking stressed. The day before the executive presentation, Brian was unusually confident. He strutted around the office, made jokes with the sales team, even brought donuts for the department, something he'd never done before. Big day tomorrow, he said to me as he dropped a chocolate glazed on my desk. Make sure you're prepared for the meeting. What exactly should I be prepared for? I asked, leaving the donut untouched. Just be ready to discuss execution timelines if they ask, he said vaguely. I'll handle the strategy presentation. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something didn't feel right. I logged into our shared marketing drive from home and noticed a new presentation file: Horizon Launch Strategy Final PyTX. I opened it, and there it was: my entire strategy, reformatted into Brian's presentation template, with his name on every slide. He hadn't changed a single substantial element, just reworded a few sentences and added more corporate jargon. Without wavering too much, I called my friend Tara from the legal department to ask a hypothetical question about intellectual property within a company before closing the laptop and starting to plan my response. The next morning, I arrived at the office early, dressed in my most professional outfit: a gray suit I typically saved for client presentations, paired with the necklace my grandmother had given me when I graduated college. For when you need to remember your worth, she had said. I needed that reminder today. The conference room filled quickly. The entire executive team was there: CEO Philip, CMO Andrea, CTO Ken, plus heads of sales, customer success, and product. Brian arrived last, carrying a leather portfolio and a confident smile. He nodded at me briefly as he set up his laptop. Before we begin, I said clearly, addressing the room, I just want to clarify my role in today's presentation. Brian looked up sharply. Haley will be available to discuss execution details after I present the strategy, he said quickly. I smiled. Actually, I was hoping to understand how you'll be attributing the work being presented today. I noticed the presentation contains the strategy I developed and sent to you 2 weeks ago. The room went silent. Brian's face flushed slightly, but he recovered quickly. Haley contributed some research elements that I incorporated into the broader strategy, he said smoothly. That's how collaborative teams work. CEO Philip looked between us, clearly sensing tension. Brian, is this your strategy or Haley's? Brian straightened his tie. It's my strategy, of course. As marketing director, all departmental output falls under my direction. Haley and other team members provided supporting elements. I maintained my composure, though my heart was pounding. I'm happy to show you the complete strategy document I submitted to Brian with the time-stamped email. You'll find the presentation is identical in substance, just reformatted. The CMO, Andrea, frowned. Let's see that email, please. I opened my laptop and projected the email on the screen, showing the detailed strategy document with the date, 2 weeks prior. Then I pulled up another document. I've also maintained a work journal documenting the development process of this strategy, including research sources, brainstorming sessions, and refinement stages. You'll see entries dating back 6 weeks. Brian's confidence was crumbling visibly now. This is unprofessional, Haley. We can discuss team contributions after the presentation. I agree this is unprofessional, said Philip, our CEO, his voice stern. But not on Haley's part. He turned to Brian. Did you develop this strategy or did Haley? Brian glanced around the room, realizing he was cornered. We both contributed. As her manager, I guided the direction and— That's not what I asked, Philip interrupted. Did you present Haley's work as your own? The silence that followed was answer enough. I think we need to reschedule this presentation, Andrea, our CMO, said firmly. And have some separate conversations first. Brian, I'd like to see you in my office immediately. Haley, please wait for me in the small conference room. As the executives filed out, I caught several sympathetic glances. The marketing team members present looked stunned. Brian wouldn't meet my eyes as he gathered his things and followed Andrea. I sat alone in the small conference room for 45 minutes, reviewing my documentation and calming my nerves. I hadn't planned to confront Brian so publicly, but when I saw him about to present my work, something inside me refused to stay silent. Finally, Andrea entered with Philip. Their expressions were serious, but not unkind. First, I want to apologize, Andrea began. We should have had better oversight of the department dynamics. We've reviewed your documentation, Philip added, and spoken with Brian. He eventually admitted to using your strategy without attribution. Andrea leaned forward. We'd like you to present the Horizon launch strategy to us tomorrow. The full strategy as you envisioned it. And we'd like to discuss your role at Meridian moving forward. I nodded, maintaining my professional demeanor despite the surge of vindication I felt. I'd be happy to present the strategy. As for my role, I've always been committed to Meridian's success. That's evident, Philip said, and it deserves recognition. The next day's presentation went perfectly. I knew the strategy inside and out, every data point, every creative concept, every implementation challenge. The executives asked tough questions, which I answered confidently. By the end, the energy in the room had transformed from the tension of yesterday to genuine excitement. This is exactly what we needed, Philip said as I concluded. Innovative but executable. Bold but backed by data. Andrea smiled. I think we've made our decision about the Horizon launch strategy and about the leadership needed to execute it. 3 days later, it was announced that Brian had decided to pursue other opportunities, the corporate euphemism for being asked to leave. And I was promoted to marketing director with responsibility for the Horizon launch and a significant salary increase. But the story doesn't end there. Because while having my work recognized was satisfying, the coming months would reveal just how thoroughly Brian had underestimated me and how completely he would come to regret it. The first challenge came sooner than I expected. Just 1 week into my new role, I discovered that Brian had been misrepresenting our marketing performance to the executive team for months. Campaigns that were underperforming had been reported as successes. Budget had been allocated to vendors with questionable results. Worst of all, he had committed us to a massive advertising contract with a digital agency that had produced minimal returns, but that happened to be owned by his former college roommate. I could have hidden these discoveries, started fresh, and blamed any past issues on Brian. But that wasn't my style. I compiled a detailed analysis and requested a meeting with Andrea and Philip. I need to share some concerning findings about our marketing operations, I began, sliding the report across the table. Brian misrepresented several key metrics and made commitments that aren't serving our business. Philip frowned as he reviewed the numbers. Why would he do this? I believe he was more concerned with appearances than actual results, I replied. The digital agency receiving 40% of our budget is owned by his former roommate. Andrea looked up sharply. That wasn't disclosed in any of the vendor documentation. No, it wasn't, I confirmed. I only discovered it through LinkedIn connections. They exchanged concerned glances. What do you recommend? Andrea asked. I took a deep breath. A comprehensive reset. I want to review all agency relationships, reallocate the budget based on performance data, and implement transparent reporting that the whole executive team can access anytime. It might hurt our numbers temporarily while we adjust, but it will build a stronger foundation. Do it, Philip said firmly. We trust your judgment, Haley. That trust would be tested over the next months. Unwinding Brian's web of poor decisions wasn't easy. The agency owned by his friend threatened legal action when I terminated their contract, claiming we were obligated to continue for another year. Our legal team found multiple breaches on their side, rendering the contract void. Several other vendors Brian had brought in also underperformed, and each separation was messy. One actually called Philip directly, claiming I was dismantling valuable relationships out of personal vendetta. Is that what's happening here? Philip asked when he called me to his office. I placed performance reports for each terminated vendor on his desk. These relationships were valuable primarily to Brian, not to Meridian. The numbers speak for themselves. He reviewed the documentation and nodded. Proceed as planned, but keep me informed. These transitions are creating some waves. Those waves were nothing compared to what happened next. 3 months after Brian's departure, I received a LinkedIn message from a marketing coordinator at Medisoft, one of our main competitors. I don't know if I should be sending this, the message began, but it doesn't feel right to stay silent. Brian Harris was hired as our VP of marketing last month. In his first department meeting, he presented a launch strategy for our new patient portal that looks remarkably similar to materials he brought from Meridian. Some of my colleagues who saw it said it's practically identical to your Horizon strategy. My blood ran cold. I immediately forwarded the message to our legal team and Andrea, then requested an emergency meeting. This is a serious IP issue, our general counsel Sarah said gravely. If he's using Meridian's proprietary strategy at a competitor, we need to act immediately. Within hours, a cease and desist letter was on its way to Medisoft's legal department. By the next day, their chief legal officer was on the phone with ours, horrified and apologetic. They hadn't known Brian had brought stolen materials. An internal investigation was launched immediately. 1 week later, Medisoft issued a formal apology to Meridian and announced that Brian Harris was no longer with their company. 2 terminations in 4 months, his reputation in our relatively small industry was in tatters. But I wasn't celebrating. I was too busy executing the Horizon launch strategy, the real one, the one I had created, and was now bringing to life with my talented team. We were working long hours, but the energy was different now. Everyone was engaged, ideas flowed freely, and people received proper credit for their contributions. The launch exceeded all expectations. Our website crashed temporarily from the traffic surge when we went live. Demo requests came in at triple our projected rate. Industry publications covered the launch extensively, with Healthcare Tech Review calling it the most innovative approach to clinical software marketing in years. 6 months after the launch, I was promoted again, this time to Vice President of Marketing, with a seat on the executive leadership team. The Horizon platform was on track to exceed our sales projections by 60%, and Meridian's valuation had increased accordingly. That should have been vindication enough. But the final chapter of this story came almost a year after Brian first stole my work. I was speaking at the Healthcare Marketing Innovation Summit, presenting a case study on the Horizon launch. As I finished my presentation and took questions from the audience, I noticed a familiar face in the back row. Brian, looking considerably less polished than I remembered, his designer suit replaced by khakis and a rumpled button-down. He avoided my eyes when I scanned the room. After the session, as attendees networked over coffee, he approached hesitantly. Congratulations on the success of Horizon, he said, his voice lacking the confidence I remembered. The launch was impressive. Thank you, I replied simply, maintaining my professionalism despite the surge of complex emotions. He shifted uncomfortably. I'm doing some consulting work now, trying to rebuild. He paused. I made a terrible mistake with you, Haley. I've paid for it, but I wanted to apologize directly. I studied him for a moment. The Brian I knew would never have apologized unless he wanted something. What kind of consulting are you doing? I asked, and he glanced down. Nothing at your level. Small businesses mostly. Local medical practices. It's a step down, but it's honest work. Honest work is good, I replied. That's all any of us should be doing. I should have recognized your talent instead of trying to use it for my own advancement, he admitted. I didn't just lose a job, I lost my reputation. Turns out stealing someone's work doesn't actually give you their capabilities. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered the months of dismissive treatment, the stolen credit, the attempt to take my work to a competitor. I hope you've learned from this experience, Brian, I said finally. Success built on someone else's foundation never lasts. He nodded, then asked hesitantly, I know I have no right to ask, but there's a marketing coordinator position open at Meridian. I saw it online. Would you consider, would there be any chance? I almost laughed at the irony. Brian Harris, who once dismissed my strategic thinking, now hoping to work under my leadership in an entry level role. But I kept my expression neutral. I don't think that would be appropriate given our history, I replied. But I wish you luck with your consulting business. As I walked away, I heard him call after me, I should never have underestimated you, Haley. It's the biggest mistake of my career. I didn't turn around, but I allowed myself a small smile. The truth was, Brian's betrayal had pushed me to stand up for myself in a way I might not have otherwise. His theft of my work had forced me to advocate for my contributions more visibly. In trying to sideline me, he had inadvertently pushed me into the spotlight. Back at Meridian, my new marketing team was thriving under a culture of collaboration and recognition. Every team member's contributions were acknowledged. Ideas were evaluated on merit, not on who proposed them. The results spoke for themselves. Our marketing metrics continued to improve, and employee satisfaction scores in my department were the highest in the company. In my corner office, larger than the one Brian had coveted, I kept a small framed note on my desk. It wasn't Brian's apology or a recognition award or any public validation. It was a post-it note I had written to myself the night I discovered Brian had stolen my work. Your value isn't determined by those who fail to see it. That night had been a turning point. I could have resigned in anger, filed complaints that might have been dismissed, or stayed silent to avoid conflict. Instead, I had chosen to stand firmly in my worth, to present evidence calmly and professionally, and to let my work speak for itself. 2 years after that fateful presentation where Brian had attempted to claim my strategy as his own, Meridian was acquired by a larger healthcare technology firm for an unprecedented valuation. At the celebration dinner, CEO Philip raised a toast specifically to the marketing innovation that had positioned us so advantageously in the market. To Haley, he said, glass raised, whose brilliant strategy became the foundation of our success, and whose integrity ensured it remained within our company where it belonged. As I accepted the toast with a smile, I thought about Brian and others like him in offices everywhere, people who believe they can climb by standing on others' shoulders, who mistake theft for talent, who fundamentally underestimate the capabilities of those they attempt to use. They might succeed temporarily, they might even get that promotion or corner office, but authentic success, the kind built on genuine ability, integrity, and resilience, can't be stolen. It can only be earned. And those who underestimate others often end up learning that lesson the hard way. When people ask me for career advice now, I tell them this: document everything, know your worth, and remember that while talent can be dismissed or even temporarily stolen, it can never remain hidden forever. The truth has a way of emerging, sometimes in ways far more powerful than we could have orchestrated ourselves. Brian didn't just lose a job when he stole my work, he lost his reputation, his career trajectory, and ultimately his self-respect. As for me, I gained something beyond promotions and recognition. I gained the unshakable knowledge that my success is built on my own foundation, one that no one can steal because it exists within me. And that is something worth protecting at all costs. The story of what happened between Brian and me at Meridian Technologies spread quickly through our industry. People love corporate drama, especially when it has a satisfying ending. At conferences and networking events, I'd occasionally catch whispers as I walked by. That's the one who caught her boss stealing her work. Or she's the one who exposed that fraud marketing director. At first, I was uncomfortable with this unintended notoriety. I hadn't confronted Brian to become some workplace hero. I'd simply stood up for myself and my work. But as time passed, I began to understand the impact my story was having, particularly on other women in tech and marketing. Junior team members at Meridian started coming to me for advice on how to navigate difficult workplace situations. Women from other companies reached out on LinkedIn, sharing similar experiences and asking how I'd found the courage to speak up. I realized my experience wasn't unique. What was unusual was that I had documentation and executives who eventually listened. 3 months after my promotion to VP, I instituted a new policy at Meridian. All strategy documents and campaigns would clearly credit every contributor, from interns to directors. We created a collaborative workspace where ideas could be tracked from inception to execution, with timestamps and attribution built in. When I presented this system to the executive team, Philip nodded approvingly. This isn't just about giving credit, I explained. It's about protecting our intellectual property and encouraging innovation. People contribute more freely when they know their ideas won't be appropriated. Andrea, who had become a mentor of sorts, added, "This also protects us from situations like we had with Brian. Clear documentation of who developed what and when." The system became a model that other departments adopted, and eventually it spread throughout the company. What had started as my personal defense mechanism became an organizational best practice, one that Meridian would later be recognized for in a business journal article about fostering innovation. While my professional star was rising, I occasionally wondered about Brian. I'd learned through industry connections that after his dismissal from Medisoft, he'd struggled to find comparable positions. The healthcare tech community wasn't enormous, and word had spread about his ethical breaches. Some might call it karma, but I saw it as the natural consequence of choices that prioritized shortcuts over substance. About 18 months after our confrontation in the conference room, I received an unexpected email from Brian's wife, Claire. We'd met a few times at company events, always with the forced pleasantness of professional spouses. Her message was brief but impactful. "Haley, I don't know if this is appropriate, but I wanted to thank you. What happened with Brian at Meridian was painful for our family in many ways, but it forced him to confront aspects of himself he'd been avoiding for years. He's in therapy now, working through why he felt entitled to take credit for others' work. It's been a humbling journey, but I believe he's becoming a better person. I'm not asking you to forgive him, just wanted you to know that your courage had ripple effects you might never have seen." I sat with that email for a long time before responding with equal brevity. "Claire, thank you for reaching out. I'm glad something positive has come from a difficult situation. I wish you both well on your journey forward." I meant it sincerely. I had no desire to see Brian suffer indefinitely. I just wanted him to understand the impact of his actions and perhaps change his behavior. If therapy was helping him do that, I was genuinely glad. Our story's final twist came when Meridian was preparing to go public, about 3 years after the incident. The acquisition by the larger healthcare tech firm had been just the beginning. Our valuation had tripled since then, largely on the strength of the Horizon platform's market penetration, which many traced back to the innovative marketing strategy that had launched it. During the preparations for the IPO, I was interviewed extensively by the financial team constructing our company narrative. They wanted to highlight the Horizon launch as a turning point in the company's trajectory. In one session, a senior financial analyst asked me directly, "What do you think would have happened if Brian had successfully presented your strategy as his own that day? If you hadn't spoken up?" It was a thought-provoking counterfactual. I took a moment before answering. I think the strategy itself would still have been adopted. It was sound and exactly what Meridian needed. But the execution would have failed spectacularly. I smiled slightly. Brian didn't understand the nuances of what made it work. He saw the headlines but missed the paragraphs. The launch would have underperformed, the strategy would have been blamed, and Meridian might have pivoted away from what ultimately became our most successful approach. The analyst nodded thoughtfully. "So you're saying your intervention not only corrected an ethical wrong, but potentially saved the company from a strategic misstep?" "I wouldn't go that far," I replied, though privately I believed it was true. I'd say it ensured the strategy was executed by someone who fully understood its foundations and flexibility. When the IPO prospectus was published, there was a brief but meaningful mention of how strategic leadership in marketing transformed Meridian's market position. Philip had insisted my name be included, which was unusual in such documents. It was a small thing, perhaps, but symbolic of how far we'd come in recognizing individual contributions. On the day Meridian went public, standing on the exchange floor with the executive team as the opening bell rang, I felt a profound sense of closure. 5 years earlier, I had been creating social media posts and updating websites. Now I was a key executive in a publicly traded company with equity that would set me up financially for life. My phone buzzed with a LinkedIn notification as we left the exchange. It was from Brian. Congratulations on the IPO. I saw your name in the prospectus. Well deserved. I didn't respond. Some chapters are better left closed. Later that evening, as the executive team celebrated at an upscale restaurant, Philip raised yet another toast. To turning points, he said, glass in hand, and to having the wisdom to recognize them when they arrive. I clinked my glass against his, thinking about that conference room confrontation years ago. It had indeed been a turning point, not just for my career, but for how I understood my own power. The most valuable strategy I'd ever developed hadn't been for a product launch or a marketing campaign. It had been for myself, standing firm in my worth, documenting my contributions, and refusing to let others diminish what I had built. That strategy continues to serve me well.